Hello, and welcome to this lovely episode of Gaming with Soul. We have stopped numbering them because, reasons. Um, that way, we can, if we decide one needs to be sent out before another, we can switch it up and whatnot.
Makes sense.
Yep. I want to, I'll get to the rest of the intro, but I do want to start with an apology. I am sniffly as crud. I am full of snot and fun. But anyway, this is Gaming with Soul, seeking soul through the lens of gaming and pop culture. My name is Jamie.
Hi, I'm Corin.
I think I got it right.
You did. Well done.
Yeah.
Hey, I would
Yeah.
I'm holding crystals, so I found
Fair enough.
Before we go further into this particular topic, I want to pop up, ironically, a trigger warning. If you are dealing with or working through or have yet to work through any repressed or unexplored and unhealed trauma, this may not be the best episode for you. We are going to be talking about some oddly triggery topics.
Yes, specifically things that trigger us in pop culture and whatnot.
Yes, I think I got this very strong feeling that we needed to really explore triggers. We've discussed a few topics that have triggered. We know Shadow Warrior triggered someone. We know Shadow Sovereign is triggering people. There were elements in thought. There's these shadowy aspects were triggering. And so it's like, well, okay, so what the hell is a trigger? We hear this word thrown around so much, and there's not always a lot of clarity around what specifically triggers are. I mean, what do you know triggers to be?
Triggers are things that give you bad feels in a lot of ways. It's big in the gaming culture. People will be like, you'll say something that they don't like, and they'll be like triggered. It's usually like a visceral, which is such a bullshit thing. So half the time it's not actually triggered. I mean, sometimes it's legitimate, but sometimes it's just people being dicks.
Yeah, it's become a bit overused in a lot of ways, which is why I felt this clarity needs to be made, because it is a bit of a buzzword about anything that sets you off. And although that's kind of where triggers are, it isn't really.
Yeah, it's a visceral gut reaction was where I was going to go next.
Yeah, and it can be. But this is the thing, triggers actually can happen on virtually every aspect of the scale. And I mean, ultimately, look, the definition of a trigger is a strong emotional response to something. Now, that something can be anything from a physical experience that you're going through. It can be a conversation that you're having with somebody. It can be, let's face it, through your pop culture, through our movies, our books, our games, things, elements that we see and experience and witness, they can set us off. And they can set us off in very, very, very different ways. And a lot of people aren't always aware that it also can go to the positive too. Triggers can be anything from it repulses you to the point where you just turn away from it and just, no, it's just a, no, don't want to, no, that's just a nut for me, no. To full-blown PTSD.
Yeah.
Triggering in its extremest form is post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah.
That is the purest, rawest, and most vicious form of it, where literally a person who has been through such extreme trauma, anything that puts some semblance or some resemblance of their trauma into their lives triggers them to completely relive that trauma.
Yeah.
To almost go, there are some that will completely go into flashback and literally be reliving the trauma. Others will just literally shut down, curl up into a fetal position and shake to high heaven. Others, they will all, again, people respond differently to trauma and tragedy. But PTSD is triggering in its extremest form. And there is always, with a trigger, rather than just a simply, I don't like that, or that's not that doesn't resonate with whatever. When it actually triggers, you will have an emotional reaction to it. Now, what can trigger us can vary from day to day, because it will depend on our mood, it will depend on what we've been experiencing, and it will depend on what we are going through. As a spiritual, I can say it depends on the energies. For me, it depends on the energies at the moment, what the astrology is doing, because I will be more raw and more susceptible to certain things at this time compared to at this time. So for me, it's being aware of all those energetic aspects, because they will influence me as well. Sometimes things will just bounce off me. Other times they will destroy me.
Yeah.
Not so much anymore, but it can still happen. You can still have those responses. But the big thing that we all need to be aware of is just how much we expose ourselves to our triggers through our media, through our games. Okay, you and I, we had that discussion. We hit that earlier on in one of our other episodes about Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Yeah, as soon as I get to as soon as I get to England, I have a hard time keep going.
Yeah. And to me, I can see in that aspect in you where obviously you have been forced to leave homeland for the strange new lands before, and it doesn't sit right with your soul. And so it brings up this natural resistance to I find something else to do instead, or, oh, no, I don't feel like doing that anymore.
Yeah.
And it does feel kind of like you're shutting something off or shutting something down. And this is another thing about triggers, is sometimes triggering can come up and it's just making you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. And so, I think that's the big thing with Assassin's Creed is I just start feeling uncomfortable because I'm like, okay, that and open world games in general kind of trigger me, where I'm just like, I don't know what to do now, so I'm going to play a different game.
That's fair too. That can sometimes be that whole overwhelm.
Yeah.
Too much exposure, which is why a lot of games will only give you that trickle where you only get so much at a time.
Yeah.
I've always been, they give me the whole open world because then I can choose how I like to do things. I like to see what's available, and then I'll choose what I want to do. That's kind of how I work. It's like I work better in a framework, but open within that framework. Whereas there's something about that linear, again, that's a masculine thing, that linear aspect, having some path to follow, direct line or direct perspective. I mean, I get very triggered in Assassin's Creed as well, but for very different reasons. I mean, I did get triggered in Valhalla, trudging through the snow. That gets to me. I find that very emotional. So there's something in me somewhere that has this, I was lost in the snow. I know this despair of trudging endlessly through snow.
Yeah, I've experienced that in my current life.
Yeah, in your environment, that makes sense, but not here in Australia. Certainly not where I live in Australia. That's for damn sure.
I remember one year for one of the when I was with one of my exes, one of her kids' birthdays, we went out for a long walk and got lost in the snow and ended up like 3 miles from the house. It was me and like 6 girls, all the age of like 12.
Oh,
just
wow.
lost.
Oh, geez, you were lucky. But yeah, it was strange because even when you get to England, there are parts in the north that turn into the snow too. And to me, there's almost this despair. And part of me originally was just it's just the landscape. It's all white. It's all bleak.
Oh.
And then when I go and see the green and all that sort of stuff, it's so much better for me. But no, there was something about that whole trudging through the snow.
Yeah. I was going to say, it could also be that snow, especially in like Norse ideals and whatnot, represents death. Like the bleak white, it is the time of death.
And this is an interesting thing. Again, being Australian, we especially, we're just about to approach Mabon, which is the equal days and nights. You know, one of the mid-year one of the yearly festivals, and of course, being in Australia, we're the opposite. It's springtime for us. Most cultures, when they talk about the death cycle and the death season, will talk about winter, and that's the cold, barren, the snow, because the snow kills everything, and you don't see regrowth until springtime. Whereas in Australia, especially where I live in the southern sort of coastal areas, the death season for us is summer.
Because it gets so warm.
It gets so hot, everything goes brown, everything dies because there's no rain. It's too hot, everything just dries out. And so when autumn comes, the rains come back in, come midwinter, everything is green again. And to us, that is the life cycle. So for us, winter may be cold and wet and miserable, but it's when everything grows.
Yeah,
so it has that different meanings to us. But then again, if you go to the Australian Indigenous people, they have their own calendar, and I think there's like 6 seasons. Forgive me, I don't know what they are, but it actually makes a lot more sense for our climate.
Yeah.
Especially in the northern hemisphere and the desert areas too. They have their own kind of climate regulations because it works differently there too.
Where Minnesota has 2 seasons.
Cold and hot.
No, it's a common Minnesotan idea that we have 2 seasons, winter and road construction.
Your winters go for a long time. Sure, I've noticed that.
Many months of winter, and then we get a couple months of spring, and then many months of summer, and a couple months of fall.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help that we define, like, we'll be like, it's spring now, but there's still snow all over the ground because just because we've decided it's spring, and because the equinox and whatnot is coming, that doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't snow.
But I mean, some people do get triggered by the seasons. There is actually a form of depression that is brought on by a lack of sunlight. So people who have this form of depression are given yellow tinted glasses, and that can actually help fight the depression. I mean, another thing obviously is vitamin D. I noticed for myself too, I can get a little bit vitamin D deficient, and that's from a lack of sunshine. I work inside and I work from home, so I don't even commute. So I don't always get as much sunlight as I should. And being a dark-skinned European, I actually don't absorb sunlight particularly well. So I need to take that vitamin D supplement. And it feels like taking liquid sunlight sometimes. It's quite inspiring.
I should probably try vitamin D since I am inside most of the time.
Inside night shift worker. It might help.
Me and the sun have a very strained relationship.
Unfortunately, my skin doesn't like the sun very much anymore. I'm getting very mottled as I get older. It's my European skin does not like excessive sunlight. But one of the other things that Assassin's Creed triggers terribly in me, though, is my claustrophobia. Now, I didn't have terrible claustrophobia until I needed an MRI scan when I was especially large. That was after I had that MRI, I was full-blown claustrophobic. Any scene in a movie where I saw someone in a tight space, I would, turn away just like that. That sets me off.
Yeah.
In Assassin's Creed, I know in Origins, and I mean, even some of the ones with Ezio where you're going through the tombs, that can trigger me. But Bayek in the pyramids, it's like, I've always wanted to go to the pyramids. I wanted to go inside the pyramids. Bayek starts squeezing through them. It's like, I don't think I can do this.
No pyramids for me, thanks.
Too tight to squeeze. Too tight to squeeze for me. And so it's like, this actually allows me to do that. I can explore the pyramids, which normally would be triggering the hell out of my claustrophobia. It's like, I'm not doing good. But every now and then, if it starts getting a bit bad, it's like, okay, stop, breathe, arms out, put my arms out. Okay, no, I'm not in a tight enclosed space. There's plenty of fresh air. Okay. It's just being all right. And I go back into it again. One thing it always triggers me is diving down under the water, underwater through ruins and things like that, trying to find the next pocket of air. That will often trigger a panic rising in me.
Yeah, I
as
get
well
triggered by
too.
that one too every now and then. It's weird because it depends on the game. There's some games where I can do it just fine, and then there's some like, especially when they try to do it where you get as close as possible without going over.
Hmm.
The Price is Right mindset. Those are the ones that I do get triggered. Where it's like I'm not gonna make it. Oh, good, I made it. And yeah, I understand that too.
Yeah, and again, we could probably say that there's some aspect in family lineage where someone has been drowned. You know,
Yeah.
there's something in soul where there has been drowning. I mean, it was quite common death at some point. If you ever were a sailor on a ship at sea, it's quite common
It's
thing
coming
to.
for the Norse, especially
Yeah,
then because they were big in sea. Let's go
yeah.
to
You,
sea.
you see the longboats that went from Norway and and
That boat had
Denmark to UK. Yeah, it was
that
literally. It's like a great big long rowboat with a
canoe,
sail.
a
Yeah,
glorified canoe with a sail, and they sailed them things long distances.
yeah. For weeks and weeks in these things, you think, how?
Where did you put
How?
the food?
Yeah, there's so much that just it is inspiring the robustness of our
This is
ancestors.
this is teaching the world that I need to do more longboat research because I don't know where they kept the food.
Well, it would have just been under, under animal skins at one part of the boat, from what I can
Yeah,
gather. That would have been the only option. They didn't
yeah, but there
have
wasn't
like
a whole lot of
hulls.
room on there.
No, no. Oh, they just stop off, raid, grab some, hunt fish.
Yeah, I suppose that's probably how they did it. Is they
The big
just
thing with
lived
most
off
of the
the
longboats
Galway.
is, yeah, they didn't actually go out to sea. It's not like Christopher Columbus and
No,
James Cook, where they're crossing oceans and oceans.
there are a lot of stories about them landing in the
Oh
U.S.
yeah, Vinland and stuff like that. Those that got lost out there. So those that got
Uh-huh.
out there, you wonder how they
Or
survived. There obviously would have been elements of
tech,
fishing.
yeah, technically, I think they landed in Canada. If I did my research correctly on Vinland, it's
Mm,
technically in Newfoundland.
yeah, somewhere along those lines.
Hmm.
They found some. They find some remains, some Viking remains
Yeah,
so they know they got there.
yeah.
Not especially Americans don't know that it was actually the Dutch that got to Australia first.
Huh.
The Dutch got here first and decided they didn't bloody want it.
Yeah, well, that's because 95% of the things that live there want you dead, and
And interesting,
95% of them can pull it off.
and interestingly, a lot of people say, "Oh, they mustn't have gone down too far." It's like, no, they actually made it down as far as Perth, because we have
Yeah,
an island off the Perth coast called Rottnest Island. Now,
yeah,
Rottnest was actually the Dutch word for rat's nest,
yep.
because when they got there, they saw these things and thought they were humongous rats, and took the Nope train all the way back
Isn't that
home again.
isn't that our
That's the
very favorite, the
quokkas.
quokkas? Yeah, I
Yeah, they're
fucking
our
love quokkas.
quokkas. Quokkas are so adorable. If anybody ever is feeling miserable, Google quokka selfie,
Yeah, it's great.
QUOKKA selfie, and it will make your day,
It
because
makes me so happy knowing they exist.
they are absolutely adorable. They only live here in Western Australia. Most of them are on an island just off the coast, but there is a little colony in our southwest. The
They
ones in the
remind me,
southwest you don't see, but the ones on the
yeah,
colony are actually really friendly and will steal your cookies.
yes, they very much remind me of extremely happy, extremely friendly koalas.
Yeah. Well,
Just
actually,
having a
no,
good time.
they're tiny, itty bitty kangaroo type creatures. That's
Ah,
the
okay.
best way for anybody for us to explain. They are, think of a kangaroo about the size of a cat, but cuter. Has such a cute little adorable face, and
Yeah,
they look like they're smiling. And they are very, 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 very friendly on Rottnest Island, because they have no predators.
yeah.
There are no predators on Rottnest Island, so they have nothing to fear but people. And people go there because they love them and they're adorable little things. But
Yeah.
so yeah, Perth, apparently Rottnest Island was a great big trigger and a Nope train for the Dutch to go all the way back, all the way back home again.
Well, it makes sense though, because rats are kind of a big nope train to sailors in general.
Yeah, and you see these things at the side of cats from a distance. You see them jump, just like these are basically Hippity Hopper from Bugs Bunny.
Yeah.
That's probably a good explanation. But he wasn't, yeah, a little bit smaller than Hippity Hopper, but yeah.
Yeah. I know, like, we're talking about real life triggers. One of my biggest triggers is anytime somebody hurts an innocent thing, like animal, child.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. That's one of my big triggers. And that one kind of seems like a no duh, but I mean, like, I get a visceral reaction to it.
Yeah.
It's not just the simple, that's wrong and people shouldn't be doing it. It's, I see it and my brain instantly goes to, no, this cannot stand.
Yeah. And that is actually a really, really good example to use the difference between what is something that you just know is wrong and do not want to be a part of, and something that legitimately activates some kind of emotional trigger or some kind of psychological trigger. Because seeing somebody kick a puppy, all right, most people would hate seeing that. Most people would say something, most people would do something. But then there are some people that will experience this visceral rage.
Oh, yeah.
This absolutely over the top reaction to that particular circumstance.
Oh, yeah.
And when I say kick a puppy, we're not talking about drop kicking it out the ballpark. We're talking about, pushing it out the way with a foot. You just sort of pushing it.
Just
and one person's like, look, don't do that to the poor puppy. And another person is like, how dare you? Rah, rah,
and
rah,
I'm
rah,
definitely in the how dare you camp.
Yeah.
Like, the fuck do you think you're doing?
Now, there are going to be times when those triggers happen and it's not something you can respond to in the moment. I mean, responding and being able to change how you react to a trigger is one of those things that takes work and practice.
Oh yeah, because you put 5 years ago me in a room with somebody who kicks a puppy, and you will have a dead man in a room. Now I'll just be like, hey, can you please not do that again? I'd really appreciate it if you didn't do that again.
No, we'll sit there and explain to all those reasons why it wasn't a good thing to kick the puppy.
Yeah.
Don't you know what they say? And yeah, that's the work that we do to be able to respond to rather than react to.
Yeah.
Because a reaction is literally we just react. It's like the fuse explode, done.
Yeah.
When you respond, the fuse is lit and you can see it burning. Yeah. And it's like, oh yeah, this has hit me. How appropriate is it to lose my shit right now? And sometimes it's just like, okay, no, this is not the way to go through. And we'll go through some examples and stuff, and because I really want to help people get some ideas as to how to recognize and how to use that for personal healing and for personal growth. But I think we kind of still need to go into different types of triggers to get better ideas. I mean, I've asked in a couple of my groups for people to give me examples of things that has triggered them in TV and movies and games. Someone brought up reality TV. Reality TV shows where, like the SAS, and people are being pushed beyond their physical limits, beyond their emotional limits, where they are being pushed and you can see that they're going to break.
Yeah.
And they're pushing them for ratings,
money, whatever.
Yeah. And that is something that, again, we see something like that. And if we have experienced where someone has pushed us beyond our limits, where for something we had to do took us beyond what we were physically capable of doing in that moment, it will trigger within us that empathy.
Yeah.
And that is actually a really, really big thing. The truth is the more empathetic you are, the more sensitive you are, the more likely you are to get triggered.
Yeah. Yeah, I've noticed that too. There are more things that trigger me now. Like a big example, and I think I've discussed this in a couple things in a couple episodes now. But this is one of the little behind the scenes peek curtain. We've gone through our entire backlog and are now just recording these as they go. Partially because I'd like to be able to respond to current events a little faster.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of those examples of like I have a visceral reaction, and I think it's mostly over now. But I had a very big visceral reaction to the Blizzard, the way they were treating their female employees.
Yep.
And that's something that before I would have been like, hey, you really should treat your female employees better. And now it's like I will never touch a Blizzard product again. I cannot, in good conscience, support Blizzard at any point.
Yep.
And that's the difference between how I used to be and now that I've come a little ways down the path. How my trigger manifests now is I cannot, because before it had been like, yeah, that sucks, I'm still going to play Diablo, and now it's like, nope, I'm done. Diablo 3 is over, even though I've already paid money for it. Never going to load it up.
Mm-hmm. I hear you. And it is a huge talk, or a huge indicator of that evolution, of that personal growth and that personal evolution. And it is one of the really sucky.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. It's one of the really sucky things about awakening.
Yeah.
Is you end up having to say, well, just, oh fuck.
Yeah.
I can't do that now.
Yeah.
Because it's now goes against everything that I stand for.
Yeah, because they just released the Diablo 2 remake, and I was like, I was really looking forward to it. Never going to buy it. Like,
yeah, and it is one of those things that it's also what you were just talking about. Talks very much about the state that kind of the world is in with and where we kind of need to go to. Where there's been a lot. I mean, let's face it, triggering. And everything about triggering is ultimately the fuel that is behind the big PC and cancel culture movements.
Yeah.
This is a problem. This is a real problem. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of shit in this world that still needs to be fixed around racism, around sexism, those sorts of things. But identifying and healing these things does not mean wiping it out of our viewpoints and out of our history.
Especially because, there's the phrase, remember your history or you're damned to repeat it.
Doomed to repeat it, exactly. And we do not want to go back the way it was, nor do we want the pendulum to swing to the other extreme either. We need to find this medium. And this is actually a really, really big problem with a lot of the older spiritual movements, a lot of the old ways, is this emotional bypassing. It is bypassing. There has been a lot of movement in the lights, the love and light movements, spirituality, in Christianity, in Wiccan, in all these things where it says if you do good and you think good and you focus good and you be positive, then good things will happen. And if you avoid all the bad things, then nothing bad will happen.
Yeah.
And it creates more of the same, because people then, rather than dealing with these triggers, rather than dealing with and healing these social problems, we avoid them, or we pretend they don't exist. And that was where where once perhaps we would see something and it's like, oh no, I don't agree with that. Oh, well, I've already paid for it. It doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
That's the ability to still talk yourself out of it, because there's this bypassing of the truth.
Yeah.
But when you really get into those higher levels of truth, those higher levels of knowledge, you get to that, no, can't do it. Can't do that anymore.
I can't. And it sucks because, like I said, I already bought, I paid for D3 already. I could go play a season. I can't even bring myself to load it up. And I know myself well enough to know that if I went and loaded it up right now, I would load it up, get to the title screen, and just go, yeah, not feeling it, and log back out.
Yeah. Again, if they have a massive overhaul of how they operate and their, their integrity, then sure, if they change their moral values to align with yours, of course you can change.
Yeah.
That's actually kind of the reason why we boycott in the fucking first place.
Yep.
So when they do meet your expectations or they do meet your requirements, support them again to say, hey, awesome, this was good.
Yep.
I can now support you again. And that's the way, because it will, and it does change. It does change how corporate works with the public, because let's face it, nobody buys their product and they'll think, oh shit, we need to do something. But yeah, the avoidance aspect of it is huge in triggering. We cannot simply avoid something because it upsets us. And it's something that I actually had to own, because for a very, very long time, I kind of avoided the news.
Yeah.
And again, I understand that there is a lot of problems with different types of news organizations, and, you can't trust these ones, and blah, 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 blah. But there is good, reputable news operations out there. There is good news to find if you go looking for it. But I kind of went through that whole, I'm in Australia, I'm in Perth, I'm safe, I don't have to worry about it, it doesn't affect me. If I stay away from it, then I won't get upset by it, then it won't worry me, then it won't make me panic, and I won't have anxiety and all of these things. But at the end of the day, you have no clue. It's like giving away your power. It really is.
For me, I find that I interact best with news if it's from a comedy source.
Satirical news. I do enjoy my satirical news. We've got some good ones here in Australia too.
I can't help it. It's like when I try to watch regular news, I don't absorb any of it. But if you give it to me in satire, I'm like, yep, sure, I like that. So like, I get a good chunk of my video gaming news, and my favorite part about this is they themselves will be like, don't do what I'm doing, but I get a good chunk of my video gaming news from Loading Ready Run, and Graham just went on a big thing going, you really should do research into the news topics, because we're doing a very shallow dive that we think is funny and stupid. And I'm just like, yes, except I can't process what other places are doing. Like
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm also, you've said and talked a lot, and a lot of my American friends have talked too, about how your news agencies aren't always the most ethical.
No, and it's ratings. They're doing everything they can for money, so they do the most scandalous topics instead of
and it's not just that. I've seen it even in the Australian news, where half the news things have turned into infomercials.
Yeah.
And yes, it's done in this way that is sensationalist. It doesn't go down as well here, I think. But we also do have a couple of organisations where we can go to for news without the sensationalist. So we do have those outlets. And I also do watch a fair bit of overseas from different, big news groups overseas too, to keep a varied perspective. But in saying that, it's not, I don't sit there constantly. It's like, especially when I feel something is off. Like if I wake up and I feel there is something seriously out of kilter with the energetics, I'll have a snoop on the news to see if anything big has gone down.
Yeah.
Usually it has.
I just realized something.
Mm-hmm.
And this is way off topic and left field. I should have said this at the beginning. This is the first episode that should be released where I'm using the new mic.
Yes.
So
yes, it
the reason I'm bringing it up is, and I'm bringing it up a half an hour into the episode. Go me. Yes, my sound quality has changed. You are not hearing things.
Yes, you will hear him a lot better at the moment than me. I do apologize. I actually have a proper mic on order, but it's going to be a few more weeks before I get that. So you'll have to bear with us until then. So hopefully my audio is not terrible.
Yeah. Well,
but but compared to you now, I sound shit.
Fair. And I do apologize for kind of railroading in the middle of this episode, but I just realized I didn't say it at the beginning, and it's something that I should probably address. Also, the reason I'm snuffly and everything is I just got done with a 5.5-hour drive, so I'm a little tired.
Yes, you've had a busy weekend.
Yeah.
Busy bear.
I, on a whim, decided to go meet my guild leaders in person. They live a state away. I drove down there today, or I drove down there at 2 a.m. today. I passed out on their floor for a while, and then we hung out, got food, and I drove back.
Oh dear. Okay, so
We're all vaccinated. Stop freaking out.
even I'm on my way now.
Yeah, but
well, look,
didn't like Australia have a hard time getting vaccinations for a while?
we did. Basically, yeah, our Pfizer vaccine and the orders got cancelled because Europe kind of said, we need it more. And although Australia kind of chucked a little bit of a tantrum over it, most of us were going, they kind of do.
Yeah,
we're okay. We can last.
We're
Most
doing
of Australia
well
was
because
actually,
we're actually fucking taking precautions, unlike the rest of you idiots.
Except, yeah, there was some of us were just like, yeah, no, actually, we're happy to wait. We'll let you guys be the guinea pigs.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were the rollout has been slow, which is why the eastern states are having a bit of a hard time with COVID at the moment. And we've got a locked border again, so woo.
Yay. But anyway, sorry. I apologize
That's
for
all right.
derailing it. It popped into my head that behind the curtain, we had recorded 2 episodes and decided they weren't up to our quality standards since I've gotten the new mic, partially just because I have been not fully present for the last 2 because I've had a lot of really big changes in my life.
You and me both. It's been a rough month for both of us.
Yeah,
so it was hard to put anything together and to get the energy.
Yeah, I had to relocate my office and stuff like that because my 17-year-old niece moved in and she needed the space. So
yeah, so we've both been dealing with stuff. It's just it hasn't synced up. So we're trying to get back into the flow with things now, and seeing everybody around me getting so badly triggered, it's just like, no, we need to talk triggers.
Yep, and so that very nicely segues us back into what we're actually supposed to be talking about instead of my random tangent bullshit.
Alrighty, so let's go back into let's talk about, okay, so how do we use a trigger? We know kind of now what a trigger is. It's an emotional reaction to something, which can vary in degree depending on what you're experiencing at that time.
Yeah.
But how do we use this as something to heal ourselves? Well, the first trick is catching it.
Yep.
Is catching it. And we have talked, I think we talked a little bit about being more aware, about being awake and being aware. So, doing things a little bit different every day so we're not going through the same motions of repeating the same behaviors over and over again. So if we do something,
very guilty of routine, getting into a routine and just going.
Most people are. If you've got a 9-to-5er that, and when I say 9-to-5er, I just mean a regular monotony kind of job where there's not a great
scheduled.
Yeah. Same place, doing kind of the same thing in the same kind of environment with little variety, little change. Within that system, you do end up going into this automatic drive. And when we're
which I did for a very long time until I switched departments at my job, and now my job actually varies quite a bit every day.
Yeah. But there's still that element of it's the same kind of, yes, there are aspects that vary, but it's still...
While that's true, I have a lot more problem solving in my day now, and that helps.
Yeah, that will definitely do it too. But anything that puts us into that where we are going through a routine that we're not specifically fond of, or we're just going through the motions because it needs to be done, we end up in this automatic drive, or autopilot.
Yep.
And of course, if we're in that functioning, then of course anything that we get triggered to or anything that comes up, we're not present to pick it up. Now, again, I'm not putting judgment on. This is to say to you, okay, so if that is the case, the moment you become aware of it, because let's face it, hindsight's fucking awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Most of us have had those moments where we get home, it's like, why the hell did I do that today?
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of moments. There's a lot of moments where I'll react to something like talking to somebody, and then I'll like even halfway through the conversation be like, hey, that was unfair of me, I apologize.
Yeah, that is great when we can do that, when we can actually own in that moment, just say, yeah, that wasn't cool, I do apologize for that. But a lot of the times too, for us, it's this being able to pick up, pick it, or to be able to acknowledge it when it happens. So yes, if you can't do it in the moment, don't think that picking it up later was pointless, because at least you found it. At least you've become aware that there was something there that caused you to react, not respond, but react, and react poorly. But usually it's poorly. Because let's have a quick talk. I'm going to go segue slightly. Triggers can also be good things. Emotional triggers can also be good things. You watch something that triggers a positive memory in you, it can bring up that positive response. You look at a photo of your beloved, that's going to bring up a triggered emotional response. You relive, or you eat something that you used to adore when you're that still triggers emotion, and it triggers an emotional reaction. It's just that reaction is a positive one, and it can go to that positive swing as well. So we know that there are things that we can identify. It's like, yes, that made me feel really good because it reminded me of this, 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 and this. This is kind of what the negative trigger does. It's like, okay, that made me feel shit. Why?
Yeah.
Why? What is the nugget of gold here? Now, when you can get to that point, you can catch it in the moment. And it literally just feels like being slapped. And again, to the degree, depends upon how badly you were triggered.
Yeah.
And you can just simply go, oh, isn't that interesting? Okay. And then acknowledge whatever that feeling is. Validate to yourself in the moment that you are actually safe, and respond appropriately. And then you can dive deeper into how to heal that wound and that trigger. The big thing I just really want to stress is that whole do not avoid. Okay.
Yeah.
Some people think that by avoiding these things, it will make it easier. No, it will actually make you more triggered.
Oh,
because
it makes it worse.
The more you avoid it, the less resilience you develop to it. And literally, you are then programming yourself that every time this triggers you, you need to run away. Triggers. Look, avoiding them, don't do it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, avoiding a trigger actually makes that trigger worse.
Yes. Yeah, there was. I used to talk about Dr. K a couple times on here. I haven't watched any of his videos recently, but I still think he is phenomenal. He likes to talk about the Hindu and I believe it's the Hindu and the Indian, the samskar.
Yep.
And how it's like a big ball. He likes to describe it as like a big ball in your chest that you slowly have to digest away by sitting with it and thinking on it and meditating on it and stuff like that.
Yeah. And that is actually the unfortunate truth of the matter is in order to overcome your triggers, you need to be able to sit with how uncomfortable it makes you.
Yeah.
Which is why the more intense the triggers, when you start leaning into PTSD, I strongly recommend you get help.
Yeah.
You get a professional or a team of professionals that can help you work through this process and support you in whatever way you need to be supported. If they are things that you have healed to a degree, or you feel safe and capable to process yourself, you can try. By all means, you can try. But if you start feeling those triggers bring up anxiety, depression, any kind of mental health problems, again, this is a sign that you need help. And there's no shame in that. No shame in that whatsoever. If you need it, ask for it. Again, be your own hero.
Yeah.
Sometimes that way is asking for help.
Yep. And again, we are not mental health professionals by any stretch of the imagination. But.
No, I'm not. Neither of us are. We, as a spiritual healer, these are things that I see. These are the things that I'm seeing that raise in people, elements that need to be healed. These are to give you the clues and the tools to say, oh, that's where I need to look. This is not to replace a deep diving, deep personal, spiritual, psychological journey. These are the doorways, and we're here to provide and to offer doorways.
Yeah.
You want to go deeper, then you come and work with me personally. But this is just to show the doorways.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, being able to sit with basically just sitting with shitty feelings.
Yeah.
There is so much. Yeah, it is hard, but there's so much power and so much healing to be found with sitting with the shit, with the crap, with the pain, with the uncomfortable, with the discomfort, because there's so much that can be learnt there. Half of our problems come from not giving our feelings room to be felt.
Yep. And that's another Dr. K thing I love is he's like, you need to recognize the feeling. Mm-hmm. You need to let it come to the table and let its voice be heard, but not let it control you. And slowly over time, you will start to become okay with it.
Yeah. And the other way that you can actually visualize that too is, I mean, you can actually use your own visualizations. I mean, this is what meditation, spiritual journeys, things like that come down to, is how and what visualization will work for you. Now, for some people, that journey and to talk about what it is that's triggering you and how and why you are getting triggered is to have that conversation with the little self, is to see you as child. And sit there and say, okay, why? What are you scared of? Why are you responding and reacting this way? And a lot of the times, it's simply, I'm overwhelmed. It's too much. It's nobody sees me. Nobody hears me. It comes from insecurity. It comes from, it comes from being insecure. It comes from being rejected. It comes from feeling helpless or being smothered. It comes from any one of these feelings, and our little self is remembering either what happened to us, or soul is remembering what has happened in our line, in our blood, in our karma, and we are responding and reacting to it.
Yeah.
And the more aware we are of these, the more we can sit with it, and the more we can say, this is actually really interesting. Okay, it hurts. This hurts. But it's interesting. Why has this come up now? That was completely benign. Why? Let's give an example. Say someone at work, some rando at work that you don't really know that well, or perhaps even gives you a little bit of the heebie-jeebies. They come up to you and you're reading a book, or you're playing a game on your phone, or you're doing something like that, and they come up to you. What are you doing? What are you reading? What are you playing? What are you watching? Yeah. And you automatically want to hide it.
Yeah, or yell at them. That's my usual reaction. None of your goddamn business. Go away.
Where do you think that comes from?
That is a hard question because I've never actually sat and thought about it.
Okay. Can you remember a time in your past where you were made fun of because of something you were watching, reading, doing?
Yeah, there's 1,000 times because, of course, I was a little nerdy kid growing up before being a nerdy kid was cool. Yeah, so that makes sense.
Every single time someone says to you, what are you reading? You will have this, do I hide it? Do I need to hide this?
Yep.
And that's that trigger. And if you ultimately can sit with that and have that reaction and then still, I'm reading this. You have gotten to the point where it still triggers, but you have reminded yourself that it's actually fine for me to tell this person. Or you've gotten to the point where I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Because it is also a sign to say that there is some aspect within self that hasn't been integrated, hasn't been healed, you don't feel safe to be yourself. And so whenever someone challenges some aspect of your personality, it brings up that response.
Yeah.
Someone else had brought up when they watch television or when they watch this particular show, and they watch people making bad decisions. Those bad decisions where you're watching it going, this is going to bite them. I do it. I see it in Assassin's Creed a lot. It's just like, if I had another option, I wouldn't be doing this. There is no way in hell I would be doing this right now. I can see what's going to happen. I can see they're going to get in trouble. I see this bad thing is coming. Give me another choice. And you're watching something on TV. You can see it's going to happen. And it can actually start to bring that visceral response.
Yeah, that's kind of how I am with horror. Except with horror, it's okay. It's not a visceral response as much as I see what's happening and I'm like, all right, bored now.
That's a different kind of kettle of fish. But yeah. This whole where we're getting triggered by watching people do or make mistakes or something along those lines, or tell a lie that you know they're going to get it. It's all going to come back at them at some point. And those things used to trigger me to some degree too, to the point where I could even change channels while that scene was going to happen and come back to it a bit later because it was all just so horrible and ugly to deal with. But when we are triggered like that, we need to stop and say, okay, am I still, or do I still need to forgive myself for some mistake that I have made in the past that bit me in the ass?
For some slight general grievous.
And again, it's that whole, yes, it would have been so much easier if I had just done this. It would have been so much better if I just spoken the truth. It would have been so much. But in the moment, I didn't. What's so funny?
I'm wondering if anybody caught it when I did it, but I didn't say General Grievance. I said General Grievous, the Star Wars robot villain. Just to see if anyone would notice.
Fair enough.
And then it got me giggling because you didn't notice at all. And I do apologize for that. I'm starting to get very tired.
Fair. But yeah, so when it shows, or when we get triggered like that by, bad decisions, things like that, we need to stop and say, is there something still in me that I need to forgive myself for?
Yeah.
That where I dropped the ball, or I made a bad choice that I knew at the time was clearly a bad choice, but I did it anyway. This is the sign that there is still this wound here. There is still something there that you do need to forgive yourself from. Because we all fuck up.
Yeah,
the
making a mistake, like intentionally doing something bad, blah blah blah. I get that way with my eating habits. I'll be like, this has too much sugar and I shouldn't eat it, but I really want it, and then I'll eat it and be like, that was dumb. I shouldn't have done that.
Not really a trigger though. That is more just fuck it.
It's kind of a trigger because I'm triggered that I can't have my sweets anymore.
And... Yeah. That's more. It's because it triggers denial, being denied, the act of being denied. That is one of the big things.
Just in a weird way.
Yeah, true. And triggers can happen that way too. We can be triggered by something physical. Every time we see something, every time we smell something, it can trigger a visceral reaction. Does this need to be woven in? Oh, yeah, it kind of does. I once tried to commit suicide with pool chlorine.
Oh,
and I actually worked in a shop that sold swimming pools and pool chemicals. Yeah. So the smell for the longest time, even now, if I'm not especially well, or if I'm having a really rough day and I get a strong whiff of chlorine, it can still trigger my gag reflex. And it is because, again, there's also trauma there. And this is something too, when it is triggered by our past trauma, there is actually something, the idea in the spiritual, especially in the shamanic realm, when we go through or experience something that traumatic, we actually leave a piece of our soul in that moment.
That's fair.
Which is why when we think of these moments of pain, it is legitimately like living it all over again. It physically feels as bad, as painful, as devastating. as it did when you experienced it. And that's what PTSD is literally, it is soul fragments. They left a big chunk of themselves in order to survive that trauma. They literally dropped part of themselves. And now every time they are triggered by that memory, that part of soul calls them back into it. And it's literally like reliving it. There are meditations, workshops, shamanic journeying, things like that, that really do things called soul retrieval, which are incredibly powerful. But again, the more trauma you carry with you, the more difficult these kinds of things are. And I'm not saying that doesn't mean you can't fix it. I'm just saying that, yes, you can, but it'll suck.
Yeah. And sometimes it has to suck to get better.
Yeah. I'm one of those people that will tell you it's worth it. I will absolutely guarantee that if you can see it through and keep pursuing it, it is worth it to get to that level of healing. But yeah, it sucks. Healing is messy. Healing sucks donkey balls when you're dealing with, soul and psychology and karma. But this is the awakening. This is the awakened age, is to find and to align and to heal and do all those things that we need to as a species for our own protection and our own survival. So, those finding these little elements that show us what is triggering us can really give us these windows into what is it that I need to heal within myself. There's those old sayings that says, what I hate in others, I tend to hate in myself. So that's another thing. If you are with someone that is constantly triggering you with a behavior, stop and ask, do I do this too?
Yep. Yeah, you got a lot of self-reflection to figure out.
Yeah.
I've noticed that myself. Like I get a visceral reaction when somebody objectifies women, and while generally I don't, there are times I'll look at a girl and be like, wow, she's got a really cute butt, or something like that. And,
there's objectification is a very fine line.
Yeah,
because
there is times I get up to that line and I'm like, oh, what am I doing?
Yeah. Admiration, I mean, we can all admire. There's nothing wrong with admiring beauty.
Yeah.
I mean, we are a species that loves art, after all, art, and that ideal of beauty changes and evolves and flexes. So being able to look at somebody who has those physically attractive, appealing aspects and saying, yes, I can see the beauty in that. There is nothing wrong with that. First, seeing them as only that is where the problem becomes. That is all that they are. I mean, let's say they can be all of that and the most amazing human being. They can be all of that and an empty husk.
Yeah.
It's yes, this is just that one aspect. This is just that one element of. And it is also something that especially women of over a certain age too can be very triggered by a beautiful woman.
Yep.
By another beautiful woman, because again, especially women in my age group, a lot of our media, a lot of our movies and books and stories and things like that told us we can't trust them.
Yeah.
These women, these gorgeous, sexy, women that stood in their sexual power, and they said, we can't trust them because they will steal our men, they will backstab us, they will sell us out, they will do everything to us. We can't trust them. And so there are some women that automatically will be turned off a powerful woman as a friend or as a colleague or as an ally, simply because they are triggered by the fact that she is powerful, that she stands in her power. Because a lot of us, especially those of us who are a bit older, were taught that kind of woman is dangerous.
Yeah.
But also, let's face it, masculines are taught that too. That kind of woman is a threat.
I was going to say, a lot of men find strong women very threatening and intimidating, but I think that comes from more of a place of the man is supposed to be, and I use heavy air quotes there, the strong one and the this and that and the other. And so you find a strong woman and you're like, but she is stronger than me and that is not good. And it's like she's allowed. Like, just let
And
them be stronger than you.
it goes back to, again, to the old programming. There's a lot of religious psychology behind, you know, the equalities between masculine and feminine. The inequality has been there for the majority of the time, but you go beyond, you go even older than we go into those archetypal, the tribal, where everyone had their place. But I mean, let's face it, we still hear those stories about the cavemen. The man beats the woman over the head with a stick and then drags her off by her hair.
Yeah.
You know, if that's sort of what our anthropology, I mean, it's a very stupid way of, but that was how it was portrayed for a while.
For
that
the
was
longest
caveman.
time.
Yeah, that was caveman behavior. That was primal. We
Yeah.
we know now that from archaeological digs that it was a lot more complex than that. That was not always the case. That there was a lot of, you know, coupling and mating and life partnering and all those sorts of things.
Yep.
But this is again that showing how our media, how our culture, our pop culture, what we interact with, what we watch, what we play, what we do, influences who we are. It influences those aspects of how we choose to react or how we choose to respond to what is happening, in our world. So, I mean, the best ways for us to heal a trigger ultimately comes down to challenging it.
Yeah.
What is it? Why are you here? You know.
Yeah.
Challenge the thinking. If it has been triggered by a way of thinking, then challenge that. Is this still true?
Yep.
Is this my truth? Is this an exposure truth? Is this a programmed? Is this something coming from my family?
Yeah.
Is this mine? Where does this come from? And again, you do this with curiosity, not a accusatory, I'm going to destroy it. It's okay, where did that come from?
Yeah, and that's my biggest problem with working through my triggers is I do come at them accusatory, and then I'm like, that felt terrible. Why did I do that?
And we end up destroying ourselves. And that's not good either, because these are not things to hate ourselves for, because everyone bloody does them. We just do them to different degrees and in different ways. And if anyone tells you they don't, they are lying.
Yeah.
If anyone tells you they never get triggered, they are a sociopath.
They're either a sociopath or lying, to be fair.
This is true. But if they are
it's not just like everybody who says they don't have triggers is automatically a sociopath.
No. Not quite. But yes, if they're either lying, they don't know what a trigger is.
Yeah, that's the other
another
thing.
one.
It could also be that they've avoided all of their triggers forever.
Avoided all of them, or just blamed all of them on having a bad temper.
Yeah.
That can be another thing. It's like, everything is just like, I'm angry, and it's like, it's probably all these triggers that you've not dealt with or not approached.
Yeah, that's definitely my brother-in-law.
Mm-hmm. And then, yes, there will be an element that are sociopaths. They have no emotion. So, of course, they can't be triggered if they don't have emotions. So there is that element in there.
I knew one of them, too.
They're more common than we think, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But this is not about look at all the bad things that I do. This is more about what am I doing that I can heal?
Yep.
What can I heal in myself so it no longer is a problem for me?
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's all about just being the best you can be.
Being the happiest you can be. And you can be a lot happier if everything doesn't bloody trigger. If everything doesn't activate and push you off in those weird ways. There's so much juiciness, there's so much power and so much magic to be found through these triggers. We had a little bit of a discussion about this, and I will open it up as well. If we have enough interest in this, I'm prepared to do some work with people, whether they want to be recorded or not.
Yes. And we have discussed if this gets popular, this idea of the trigger episodes and stuff getting popular. We have discussed between the two of us making this like a monthly bonus episode where we go into like listener triggers or other triggers we have found in ourselves or how we're working on our triggers, because we find this topic fascinating.
Yeah, and more tools and more tidbits that we can use to heal these triggers as well. So as we find new tools and how to work through and process them, we will share them as well.
Yeah.
But I'm more than happy to throw some of my little Mystic Mama woo-woo into doing some triggery episodes where we can
Yeah.
talk to people about things that they don't understand why this is triggering them.
And I like
Why
to
is
throw
this
my
setting in?
analytical problem-solving bullshit brain at it.
Which is always good too, because again, we get a varied perspective and a varied way of looking at things,
Yeah.
which can be good.
I
But
just ran headfirst into my mic. Good job.
but ultimately, this ends up being about, reclaiming your power.
Yeah.
Because the more these things trigger you, the more they upset you, the more they force reactions from you, rather than allowing you to respond, then the more power they have over you. And as for everything we do, we are about reclaiming power, reclaiming your power for you.
Being
to
the
help
best
you.
and happiest you can be.
Absolutely. And yeah, don't stress if you get triggered and you react badly. If someone says something and you respond really poorly and you feel like shit for it, never, ever underestimate the power of a heartfelt apology.
Yeah.
If it is eating you up alive, how you talk to somebody or how you upset somebody, apologize to them.
Yep.
Just reach out and apologize to them. Most people, now you don't get me wrong, depends on what you did, but most people respond well to the I understand.
Yep.
Most people. And I would get, even if you don't, it is still better than the sitting there dreading it.
Yeah.
The worst case scenarios, because trust me, the worst case scenario is always worse in your mind than it is in real life.
Plays the worst case scenario game. That game's not fun.
Yeah, it's not a happy place, especially if you've been through some traumas in your life, because worst case scenario gets pretty ugly.
Yeah.
So you are so much better off to just rip that bloody Band-Aid off, go up to them and say, look, that was really, really inappropriate of me. I was in a shit place. I was coming from this really wounded moment. You didn't deserve that. That was unfair, and I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
And if you do that with real emotion, with real authentic feeling behind that, most people respond really well. And if they don't, well, then maybe they shouldn't be your friend.
I need to stop singing before we get copyright striked.
But yeah, I think that's my 2 cents this week.
Yeah, and a part that we cut out, I apologize. I'm flagging on energy and starting to feel real sick. So yeah, this is a good spot to call it.
Alrighty, well, we will do that and pick it up next time.
Yep. With whatever topic we do next, possibly more on this one, possibly a new one. We will eventually go back to the other 2 archetypes we have left.
Yes.
Yes,
and we want to do.
Yep, and we want to do some like talking about pop culture icons or gods or whatever you want to call them that have appeared in pop culture and what they mean to us. Those are the 2 things we've discussed.
The big thing we wanted, what we talk about when we talk about the archetypes as they manifest as old world gods and old world energetics, we want to talk about them like we did with Thor, about their evolution, about what they were compared to what they are now. We've got a couple of really juicy ones sitting up our sleeve, waiting for the right moment for them to come through. So it's all about evolution.
Yay, evolution. Like Pokemon, we will all evolve into dinosaur. Wait, what?
Well, for me in spirituality, it is all about evolution. My business name is Evolutionary Palmistry. So it's all about the evolution of the old for the new, to serve the new, because we can't keep doing the things the same way as we always have, because it doesn't always work. It doesn't apply anymore. But it is the new age. It's the awakening. And hopefully this time we will awaken properly and not leave our shadows hidden not leave the repressed. We bring it to the surface. But I think you need to go to bed before you die.
That would be nice. So, everyone, have a lovely day.